Hey guys, FilmCrazyAdam here. Well, I'm back up and running. As you can see, my new soundboard arrived today. I have it all hooked up. I made some adjustments, tweaked it a little bit, and right now I think it sounds pretty good. Maybe more tweaks to be had in the near future, but right now we're gonna roll with this. It's also gotten a little bit colder where I'm at, and as you can see, I busted out my hoodie, and oh yes, that is a comm badge, and yes, I am a captain. I am the captain now. But anyway, on to it. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About. Tonight, I'm going to be doing my very first anime review. Now, despite my love of anime for 35 plus years and my reviewing movies in general online for almost 10 years, I have embarrassingly so haven't actually done a single anime review. Crazy, I know. I mean, celebrations to be had because I'm finally getting around to it, but kind of shame on me for not actually doing it at this point. Because it's one of the biggest loves in my life, and I promised on my return earlier this summer that I would be adding that to my repertoire, but I have yet to make good on that promise. So, without further ado, your wait is over, and tonight is the night that I make good on my word. And on that note, despite it being November now, I'm going to continue in the vein of Halloween movies and review a movie about vampires. This is a movie that I love. It's one that I recommend to everybody, and it's a movie that I like to watch around Halloween whenever I can. Though, despite the subject matter, vampires, it's not technically a Halloween movie, since up until recently that wasn't a thing in Japan. So why would a company in Japan be making a Halloween movie, especially 21 years ago when this movie came out? Although that being said, this isn't actually my first choice of animes to review. I was planning doing my favorite series of all time, which, you know what, that'll be at a later date. But this movie is still very worthy of a review, and it's high time I got to it. What movie am I about to review for you guys? It's called Vampire Hunter D: Bloodlust, and I'll give you my opinion on that, and then I'm going to get into a synopsis. I'm going to talk a little bit about the source material, which is a Japanese light novel series, and I'm going to try not to run too long, though I never try to run too long, and it's always something that I fail at. So I'll tell you right now, give you my opinion. If you're just here for that, I'll give it to you, and then you can be on your way and do whatever you want and have fun with that. If not, I hope that you stick around for all the in-depth stuff, because I like to give a little bit more than just a basic yes, no in my reviews and everything. So, without further ado, Vampire Hunter D, and yes, this is an actual physical DVD copy. My physical DVD copy that I bought at my at the very second anime convention I ever went to in October of 2002. Yeah, it's been a minute. But anyway, Vampire Hunter D is a very good movie. It's fantastic. I recommend it to everybody. If you are a fan of horror, and not just anime horror, but just horror in general, if you enjoy vampire movies, this is a good movie. I would have to give it like a star rating. I'd have to give it like a 9 out of 10. Between the animation, the cinematography, the story itself, of course the story itself, and I say the cinematography even though it's an animated movie, because the animators really attacked this or came at this from the perspective of a cinematographer, somebody who's working in the real world and says, I want to set up this shot. How do I do it in the real world? That's what a regular cinematographer would do. In animation, you're not handcuffed by that. You know, it's animation. You can do whatever. You can do any kind of perspective from any kind of angle. But this person, the animator for this, actually really came at it from the idea of a cinematographer for a live action movie. Like, this could actually, you could take shot for shot and make this into a live action movie. You'd be ruining it, of course. All animated movies made into live action movies are just ruined. But yeah, so that's my review. That is my opinion on this movie. If you should see it or not, you should definitely see this movie. It's a good movie. It's a great story, though it's a simple story, and I'll get into that right now. But like I said, if you just want me like a thumbs up or thumbs down, this is a double thumbs up, man. This is a great movie. I recommend it to everybody. You should check it out. So now moving forward, what was I saying before about story type? So I said that this was a very simple movie. or I should say the story is very simple. And that's not a dig at this movie at all, because nowadays in Hollywood, the movies are, the scale of them are so large, are so huge, and there's reversals of fortune and twists and turns and betrayals and sudden reveals and Deus Ex Machinas, and there's like a dozen and a half layers in these movies, and they're just god awful, and like they're just so bogged down, and they're just so bloated, and there's just so much crap in them that's distracting from what might be a good story, or they know it's a bad story, and so they're adding all this padding and all these extra layers, and it's to distract you from the fact that there's really nothing there. Sadly, in a lot of action movies, that's kind of the point of the action in the movie, is that it's not a very in-depth story. It's not complex, but we still need to justify the price of admission. So we want to give you something to watch, hence an action scene. So anyway, let me give you the synopsis of Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, and this will kind of highlight how it's a simple story. So the story of Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust simply is at the beginning of the movie, a vampire by the name of Lord Meyer abducts a woman by the name of Charlotte. Lady Charlotte is abducted by Meyer. He takes her in his coach, and he makes her run for it. He leaves town and basically embarks on a cross-country journey to a spaceport. Already, I might have lost you guys. Like, wait, spaceport? What the hell? So, I guess I should establish that this movie takes place 10,000 years in the future. Yeah, it takes place in like 12,000 something AD. And so, I'm trying to. Before I get into the light novels, because I read the book. Like this movie's actually based off of a book. It's based off of the third light novel in the Vampire Hunter D series. Vampire D being the main character. His name is D, and he's a vampire hunter. And it's been, let's see. This series has been. I said I was going to wait till later, but I might as well jump in now. This series is by author Hideyuki Kikuchi. He's also done other things. But he is most well known for Dark Side Blues, Wicked City, but probably the most well known is the Vampire Hunter D series, which he's been writing this series since like 1983, and this series now has 35 volumes, and it's still going. It's not slowing down, and this movie is based off of the third volume. And so back on track on the synopsis. So 10,000 years in the future, 12,000 AD. And this is kind of explained in an on-screen text prologue, that it's in the far future, that vampires were a thing, that there was that this is your typical post-apocalyptic story. So this takes place in the far-flung future, where vampires have taken over the world, but they're also on the decline at this point. And there is a breed of people, per se, a profession of people called hunters, and they are very skilled, and they're very dangerous, and they do their job well. And so among them, there is one that stands at the pinnacle, and his name is D. He is a half vampire, half human, who has grace and strength and agility and abilities that seem more than seem a little bit into the supernatural. And so that's where our story begins after Meyer abducts Lady Charlotte, is that D arrives at a man's house, an old man, and the old man has put out a bounty on Meyer to stop this vampire and bring back my daughter. And this has attracted not just D's attention, but another group of hunters called the Marcus brothers, who is made up of 4 brothers and their adopted sister Lelia. And so D is also contracted with, along with the Meyer brothers. Not at the same time. The Meyers have already taken their down payment, and they've already gone. They've got a head start on him.
But you better move fast. You've got some competition. I've hired the Marcus brothers, and they've got a head start on you.
This whole story, at this point, is a race against time for Meyer to get to the spaceport and GTFO with Charlotte, and also the Marcus brothers to get Marcus brothers ND to both get to Meyer before he can escape. Meanwhile, they are actually competing against each other. They have full conflicts with each other because they're both in competition, and like they're both very ruthless. We learn about D to some extent. We learn about the brothers and specifically Lelia, the adopted sister, to some extent. We learn about a little bit about Meyer and a little bit about Lady Charlotte, and it's all, like I said, it's all a race against time. Who can get to who first, and who can get to who first and survive. And so I'll leave it right there. That's what this is. It's a chase story. It's a story against time. And I don't want to ruin it because I think it's a good movie and I recommend it to you. So I don't want you to. I don't want to ruin this if you're going to go see this movie. Which finding this movie is actually a little bit of a chore too. That'll come later. That I will mention later. But anyway, so that's the story. It's a simple chase story, and people might say, well, it's a race against time. It's a competition story. How is that interesting? Well, let me put it to you this way: have you ever heard of sports? Literally, that's what it's kind of like that, where take any kind of sport or any kind of team sport, and so you have two teams that are basically at zero to begin the match with, and then the two in competition using different tactics, they try to best each other, in the allotted time. Who can get the most points? Who can get to straight up like a horse race? Like you've got all these characters, and they're not beating each other up. It's not like Mad Max, but I mean, who can get to the end in the least amount of time? Who can get to the prize? Who can be the first to get to the prize? Or like I said, sports teams where who can, there's a clock, and who can get to the end zone and use their strategies in an effective way to get the most points. I mean, sports have been a thing for literally thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. This goes back to beyond even the Romans. So when I say, when you say, well, that's such a simplistic story, how can it be any good? Again, it's similar. I can make a similar argument with sports. It's like, that's pretty simplistic, and yet that's a a multi-billion-dollar industry. So anyway, let me talk to you about. So that's the story. Is like it's a race against time, and see will D rescue Charlotte and kill Meyer, or will the Meyer brothers do it, or will D get killed off when he has confrontations with the Meyer brothers? Is Charlotte under Meyer's spell, or is she actually, as she says, she's doing it of her own free will? And Meyer says the same thing, this is a mutual, this is a mutual love for each other.
She's here by her own choice, Dunpeel.
I suppose my father has not told you that I'm in love with Meyer.
And so these are all the components of the story. Now, here this. And you could be like, well, that sounds too simple. How can it be very good? Well, another thing that this movie does is this is a great example of show, not tell. It's also a great example of not putting too much information into a movie, because sometimes we get bogged down with. I mentioned this before. Like, you're allowed to give me, you're allowed to leave questions in a movie as long as you answer them. However, there are some questions that don't need an answer. It literally, like, if it has nothing to do with the story, I don't need to know. If it doesn't have any bearing on the actual story itself, I don't need to know. Now, for some of you who do know who Vampire Hunter D is, you might be aware that in his left hand he has like a symbiote that lives in his hand, and the symbiote is kind of like a little bit of a Deus Ex Machina thing, where it's like if D is in a jam, this thing kind of comes out, and he's like, it's like it's a multi-tool kind of thing. It's sentient. We don't know where it comes from. It's never addressed either in the books or in either of the two movies. Yes, there's two Vampire Hunter movies, Vampire Hunter D movies. There's Bloodlust, which came out in 2001, and then just the Vampire Hunter D movie, which is based off of the first novel, which came out in '85. So we don't know anything about the left-hand parasite, the left-hand symbiote. We know nothing in the books, and I looked it up. Like, they never explained it in the books. I read the first 12 or 13 books, and I was living in California at the time, and then I moved back to Jersey, and like I just got busy with other stuff, and so I kind of forgot about it. And I thought maybe I'll go back to that, and then I saw that there was like 35, and I was like, I'm good. This is also a movie that you don't need to understand the lore of Vampire Hunter D to like it. I just said that there's like a 35 volume series. Well, there's two types of light novels in Japan.
There are two kinds of people in the world, my friend.
Or I should say there's two, yeah. I read but like, if you look back here, pretty much those top two, those two shelves on the top, that's all light novels. All this is like manga. But anyway, there's two types of light novels in Japan. There's standalone and there's series. And what does that mean is that a series book, and like they're all a series, but like you have one that the story builds one after the other. You know, a good example of that. I'm getting off topic, I know. I apologize for getting off topic, but I'm just trying to make a point. But like Spice and Wolf, Konosuba, and So I'm a Spider, So What? Yeah, weird title. But those three specifically are series books. In other words, like Volume 1 of this starts the story. Volume 2 continues the story. Volume 3 continues, and it builds one after the other, like a series. Same thing with Konosuba and Spice with Wolf. And then there's other series where each book is completely standalone. And Vampire Hunter D is one of those where whether you started reading book 2 or book 32, you are like information is readily given to you. It's simple enough. The characters are simple enough. And you don't actually need to know what happened before because the stories within each of those books is self-contained. And so this movie is based off of the third book in the series, and it's completely self-contained. So you don't need to know what came before or what's going to come after because, and this is the other reason why I stopped reading Vampire Hunter D is because the story doesn't go anywhere. Like, yeah, each one is very well written. The author paints a very vivid, very magical world, or not magical, but very detailed world. You know, a lot of depth and wonderful descriptions, but like I said, the story, it doesn't build on each other, so it doesn't go anywhere. D never develops as a character. There's no high stakes. There are no reoccurring villains. It's just he does a job, he goes off, he does. It's kind of like Scooby-Doo. They do a job, they go off to the next one, and you didn't need to watch the episode before that to get the episode after that. So that's the problem with, and D is not the only one. Vampire Hunter D is not the only one that suffers from that. There's, like I said, there's two types of light novels, and there's one or the other. And D is the one where you don't need to know anything going into it, and so like the story never went anywhere. So like I stopped watching it. But anyway, because of that, they can easily make a standalone movie, and a very good standalone movie. The character of D, and actually all the characters in this movie are actually pretty one-dimensional. Meyer is very one. It's hard to describe him because he's got nothing specific about him. He's set up as the antagonist in this story, and in the end, you can argue it's like, was there really an antagonist in this? I mean, there is a focus for D, and he's painted as a villain. He's painted as this, evil vampire that's kidnapped this mortal woman. But in the end, what? Well, I don't want to ruin the ending. Like, the revelation in the end, so on and so forth. But the characters of the Marcus brothers, they're very single-minded. They're all pretty much carbon copies of each other in terms of character depth and attitude and makeup. Some have a little bit more are a little bit more suave than the others. Some are a little bit more diplomatic. Lelia is just like, you know, she's a one-dimensional angry character, though she does have a little bit of depth to her because she has some backstory. Charlotte is 100% a one-dimensional character. And again, you're like, how is this any good? Well, again, it's the way the story is told. So going back to, all right, so the Marcus brothers. We're told that they're early on, in fact, at the very beginning of the movie, when Dee shows up to the old man's house and he says the Marcus brothers have already got a head start on you, they mention like, oh yeah, I've heard about them, like they're really dangerous. And so we go see the Marcus brothers, and actually I'm going to, you know, throw some scenes in here. And so like, I can tell you, oh yeah, they're really badass. You know, they're, you know, you don't want to fuck with these guys. You know, they're hardcore. Or I can show you.
Can't load.
So they roll up. We don't know these guys from, you know, we don't know this guy from Joe down the street. They step out of their vehicle, and boom, one guy, rain of arrows. Like, he fires these things like it's a freaking Gatling gun. Another dude, he is a master with these knives, with these spinning blades. Another dude, just strong ass mother effer with this big hammer with a spike on the end. Lelia, well, she's got her gun. You know, but she is a tough little cookie. She is not one to F with. And so that right there, I can say like, oh yeah, they're really badass. You know, like, what are you going to do? Or I can show you, and that's more powerful, to actually show the audience what this guy can do. Same thing with D. We're like, we encounter D, and we don't know anything about D, but we begin to learn by watching him that he too is someone that's not to be F'd with. Like this scene right here, when Borgoff doesn't know who's coming over this hill, he's able to track this guy, again, showing how skilled this guy is with his arrows, fires it off. D, who has no idea what's over the hill, is still able to sense this arrow coming and catch it in midair. That's pretty badass. Later on, he approaches a safe house for the Vampire Meyer, which is, you know, these buildings are set up around the world, and they've got great security. What kind of security? Well, they've got laser security.
Lasers! He's got lasers!
And D just kind of walks up to it while flicking these rocks, and you realize while watching it that he is able to detect these lasers and fire, and just, you know, seems to be casually doing. That's how great he is and how skilled he is. He's just casually flicking these stones, and it's getting in the way of lasers so that he can harmlessly walk through and up to the building. That's what I mean by showing, not telling. Then he has a fight with Meyer, and you see how badass the fight is. You know, Meyer is this crazy powerful vampire. You know, all vampires are just, you know, ridiculously powerful. And D is standing, despite not being a vampire himself, stands toe-to-toe with him. Actually seems to be getting the better of him. It's, again, that's how you know, like, show, don't tell. We see how badass D is. And there's more examples of this in the movie where you don't know anything going in. And that's what I mean. Like, this movie doesn't tell you everything, but it doesn't need to. Now, I told you this story takes place in 12,000 BC. 12,000 AD. The movie doesn't. It just says in the far-flung future, in a post-apocalyptic world. That's it. That's all you need to know. You know, you don't need to know the exact circumstances of how the world ended up like that. You just need to know it's all fucked up now, that this is a post-apocalyptic, Mad Max-esque kind of landscape. That's it. You don't need to know that. Who is D? What's his origins? Where did he come from? Who are his parents? You don't need to know that. It doesn't matter. I mean, I know who his parents are, and you know, it adds to the character. But you don't need to know it for this story. It does. All you need to know is that this guy is a half-breed, and that he's badass. Left Hand, again, he's kind of a deus ex machina. He's kind of a catch-all. Like, D ends up in a weird situation, and this thing just kind of comes out, and like he's caught in a magical trap. He sucks up the magic. In the books, he also has the ability to basically render people unconscious or like do a medical diagnostic. At a couple times in the book, D gets his left hand cut off, and then it starts walking around like Thing from the Addams Family until it reattaches itself to D. We never know what this thing is, how D got it, where it came from, or really all of its abilities. So that's why I mean it's kind of a deus ex machina kind of thing. But for the purpose of this story, we don't need to know. Like, we learn what he can do, but we don't need to know where he came from. Just roll, it's that just roll with it kind of thing. But it's a question that doesn't need to be answered. I say that, it's like, don't leave any unanswered questions. You don't need to answer this one. Certain things, I don't need to know how the sausage is made. All I need to know is, here it is in front of me, and it's delicious. That's all I need to know. I don't need to know how the sausage is made in every instance. And this is one of those where it would have, like, if D went into his backstory, it would have no place whatsoever. In fact, nobody goes into their backstory except Lelia at one point. Lelia tells D, like, what her deal is. Because D even asks, like, you're not part of this family. What's your deal? And she explains what happened.
How did you know about my mother?
You called her name, remember?
She was kidnapped by vampires. My father went after her and was trying to rescue her, so they killed him. Then after a while, my mother returned, but she wasn't my mother anymore. She'd been changed. The people in the village stoned her to death while I watched. After that, I left home. I met the Marcus brothers and joined with them. I wanted to be a hunter to avenge my parents' deaths. I've seen many terrible things since then. Lives destroyed, families devastated, hopes crushed. Every time, it seems, vampires to blame.
I can understand why you choose to do it.
And so now you know why she's a vampire hunter. And it only matters because she's not actually part of the Marcus brothers. But that whole conversation also sets up the epilogue, which is a beautiful, I love the epilogue in this. It's so beautiful, in my opinion. But it sets up the ending for this movie. Not only that, but we don't know how, there's certain things, like I said, that you don't need to know. Like, how did Meyer meet Charlotte? In the book, the girl doesn't even have a name. And in the book, it's not explained how they met. But that doesn't really matter. Like, how complex can that story possibly be? Girl meets guy, guy likes girl likes guy, boom. So we don't need to explain why that they love each other and why they want to run away. I mean, obviously, why they want to run away is because he's a vampire. No one will accept it. So, and so we don't need to know how they met. All we need to know is that they're together. Like, that's the whole drive of the story, is that he got her. There's a bounty on him because he has her, and he's making a run for it. That's your story. That's it. That's your entire plot hook right there. We don't need to know why or how they met. We just need to know that they did, and that's the whole plot hook. What else? Oh, there is another scene in this movie where there is a lot. I mean, it's basically it's an old man tells a story, and you're like, well, he's telling, not showing. That is actually another great example of storytelling within this movie, because this old man tells this story.
I'm going to tell you about the time when the children were kidnapped. There were 10 children altogether.
Yeah, I heard about that time.
Kidnappers turned out to be vampires, of course. And so the townspeople pooled their money to hire a vampire hunter. They wanted the best. And when the hunter came, he was a very strong and quiet man. And he did his job, too, which was to return the children safely back into their parents' homes. It wasn't easy, but many vampires died by his hands before this job was over with. And when it was over, and the children were back home, the people attacked the man. They said he was a Dunpeel half-vampire himself, so they punished him. Get on your horse, stranger.
Thank you.
No, it's only fitting I thank you. It's the least I can do. I may be just an old fool now, stranger, but I could never forget a face like yours. And I'll never forget what you done for me back then.
What?
That's right. I was one of them kids.
And so that's a huge reveal. That's a huge kind of like what the F moment where, okay, so this guy who's like 80 something years old or pushing 80 was rescued by D when he was like 5. So like 3/4 of a century ago, D saved this kid's life, and this kid remembered it. And it also kind of shows you the hate for the half-breeds. It explains why, no one ever really comes out and says it in this movie until this point where this guy tells the story and he's like, because they found out that you're a Dampier, you're a half-breed, they scorned you and they fucked you over and everything and they chased you out of town.
You can't trust them. That's all that's about.
We've now learned that he told us, but indirectly we were shown or we learned through his story that D's old as hell, that he is hated by people because he's a half-breed. This is another scene also where Lelia was rescued by D. Lelia shows up to the safe house and gets injured. D dresses her wounds, and that embarrasses her, and so she's got a bug up her ass, and she's pissed that he not humiliated. She feels humiliated and embarrassed, and so she wants to get him back. She wants to mess with him and like give him a hard time, and so she tells the people in the town that, oh yeah, this guy's a Dampier.
I was just gonna say, you must be awfully busy with that new Dunpeel hunter in the town now.
What Dunpeel hunter?
She sticks around and she learns the story, and so now she's learned something about D as well as we did, and so now her opinion of him has changed ever so slightly. That now she, despite the racism and the proclivity to hate these half-breeds, the prejudices, she's now kind of softened on that, realizing that maybe he's not kind of like this boogeyman. And so that right there, and so like going back to what I was on about, how this story has, like, the characters are one-dimensional and it's a very simple story, but it's the way it's told to you, it's the way that it's presented to you, that it actually is a good story. It's a good ride, and seeing these characters interact and combat with each other, all the fights that going on, they're actually really good fights. They're very breathtaking, and you're sitting on the edge of your seat. You're wondering, like, after seeing how badass the Marcus brothers are, and after seeing how badass D is, and seeing badass how Meyer is, and then they also run into this other group of mutants, actually, which were basically genetic experiments by vampires in the past. That these beings are not to be trifled with either. At some point we see also this continues kind of like painting the picture of the world. D walks through like what is obviously what used to be like an interstate or a superhighway, which is now just like a desert. And in this desert, you have these sand mantas, these giant manta rays that swim in sand. And it's kind of like, what the F am I watching? It kind of helps paint the idea that this is not your Earth. Like, it's Earth, but it's not your Earth. This is 10,000 years after some crazy science and magic and some post-apocalyptic shit happened. Like, this is not the world that you know of. It's got a whole set of, it's on a whole different level. And so all these different things that I've been throwing out at you, and I've kind of been a little bit chaotic, but all these different things make for a really great movie, a fantastic story, and a feast for the eyes. So I recommend this movie to you. Let's see, what else? I've already talked about the movies, the light novels. Right. So physical copy. So getting this movie, I'm recommending. I'm like, yo, go see this movie. Well, good luck with that, because if you look online, you will not find it. Like, you go to all these different websites, like here, like I go to Real Good, and right there it tells you not available to watch. You go to another website like Just Watch. These are, by the way, I just typed in Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust online. Let's check all these other websites. Netflix? Nope, not there. Hulu? D Plus? HBO Max? Prime Video? Peacock? Paramount Plus? Apple TV? Nope. And whatever the hell this is, no. So there is no place to find it online, though I think I saw a rumor that it might be on Manga TV, which is something on Roku, though I couldn't actually gain access to their library, so I don't know if it's true. So really, the only way to get this, the only way to watch this is to have a physical copy, which they're easily, you can buy them for cheap on Amazon. Like, that's not hard. But yeah, you can't stream this. Yes. Which reminds me of an interaction I had with a buddy of mine's wife. This is completely off topic at this point, where Young Justice Season 3, I think, was coming out on physical copy, and I texted out in our group that I was like, yeah, it's coming out. And then, for some reason, which to this day boggles my mind, she picks a fight about me, like, wasting my money and spending it on hard copies of stuff when you'll always be able to stream stuff. For now and forever. She's like, you can save all your pictures on the cloud. You can stream stuff off of Netflix and all sorts of other streaming media. Like, you'll never need a hard copy. You're just wasting space. I don't know why she picked a fight with me over something so silly as, like, look at me, I bought a DVD. But whatever the case is, you know what? Who's laughing now, huh?
Y'all laughed at me. Well, who's laughing now?
Yeah. Also, I recommend you getting hard copies of stuff, or at least, like, as soon as something is available digitally, immediately download it and put it on a hard drive, because if you have your copy of it, that means they can't mess with it, because a lot of companies now are doing that. They're going back and messing with original stuff and changing things. Primarily, that's the Hollywood leftist and, representation, blah, 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 blah. But, yeah, so who's laughing now? Me and my little hard copy. But another reason why a lot of people might not have known about this movie is because I don't think, I don't know if it'll focus, but anyway, this was licensed by a company called Urban Vision, which existed from 1996 to 2016, and they had a very small catalog, basically nothing. Like that studio that company kind of came out at the same time as a lot of others, like ADV. Pioneer Animation, Bandai, Viz, all these other anime companies, and it never went anywhere. Like they dragged their ass. They got like a copy of this, and that was it. And all these other companies, took off until actually most of those companies are gone now. There's only a few left. Like Bandai's still around, Viz is still around, ADV, Pioneer, which became Geneon, which that also doesn't exist. ADV doesn't exist, though they kind of became Sentai. Funimation doesn't exist at all because they made stupid decisions. But that's neither here nor there. Point is, like, you might not have heard of this because this wasn't owned by a mainstream company, or as mainstream as you can get in the animation world. But anyway, we'll end it right now because I don't want to go too long. Again, I've already gone like over half an hour, so I'm gonna end it right there before I get too much longer. So. I highly recommend Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. Fantastic movie, one of my favorite. I watch it every Halloween, whenever I can find the time. I recommend it to you. Fans of horror, fans of vampire stuff, you'll enjoy this. Anyway, that's all I got for you now. If you have any requests for me for things to review, please let me know what you got. If you liked what you saw, please give me a like and a subscribe, and also a share, and tell your friends. Anyway, that's all I got for you now. Talk to you later.